As many of you are aware, last Saturday my family flew to Philadelphia. Laura had a conference to attend, so I took the kids around town on an educational vacation, shall we say. We saw the Liberty Bell, various museums, and even the old Eastern State Penitentiary, which is one of the earliest prisons built in the United States. It's now a museum. Well, on Saturday night at dinner, I brought up to the kids their options for church the next morning. I thought I had picked out two wonderful possibilities. Either Mother Bethel African Methodist Episcopal, which is the first independent African American congregation in this country, dating all the way back to 1792, or Christ Church Episcopal, which dates back even farther to 1695. It's a congregation that was instrumental in starting the Episcopal Church in this country, and it happened to also be the congregation where famous founders like Benjamin Franklin and Betsy Ross and many other signers of the Declaration of Independence and Constitution all worshiped. Both of these congregations are steeped in American history, and they both would have beautiful services. So I thought I'd let the kids pick which one they got to go to. Their response was surprisingly unanimous. They didn't want to go to either. Church, they said, but we're on vacation. This promptly got them a lecture from their pastor father on the third commandment. I reminded them that vacation is not a break from church. I told them God gave us this past week, and the least we can do is take some time to worship and give thanks for the blessings God has given us, including this vacation. I thought about that notion of Sabbath as I began reflecting on today's readings. Because at a basic level, I would imagine most of us think of the Sabbath and Sabbath rest as taking time out of our busy schedules in order to go to church every Sunday, or most Sundays, or at least once or twice a month, until summer hits and then all bets are off, right? But I am thankful that all of you are here today. But the Sabbath is about more than just taking some time off each week to go to church and worship. Yes, that's part of it. But the Sabbath is also about freedom and life. Jewish Rabbi Abraham Heschel puts it this way. He says, the Sabbath as a day of rest, as a day of abstaining from toil, is not for the purpose of recovering one's lost strength and becoming fit for the forthcoming labor. The Sabbath is a day for the sake of life. Our first reading from Deuteronomy starts out quoting the Ten Commandments, just like they appear in Exodus 20, which was the first time that the Ten Commandments were given shortly after the Israelites left Egypt. There, God promises that everyone gets to rest, including your household, your servants, your animals, even the foreigner living among you. Everyone gets to rest. Because as Exodus says, God made all of creation in 6 days and rested on the seventh, so we should too. But this time, in this reading, in Deuteronomy, at the end of their 40 years of wilderness wandering, creation isn't referenced at all in this commandment. This time, the Israelites are reminded to keep the Sabbath because at one time, they didn't have the freedom to live their lives the way they chose. When Pharaoh said, "You have to work every day," the Israelites had to work every day. And if they didn't, they would die. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out from there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore your God commands you to keep the Sabbath day, Deuteronomy says. As I said earlier, the Sabbath is created for life. The Sabbath is God's way of letting us know that we are free. And God means it as a break for all. Remember, that part in the Exodus reading is also present in our reading from Deuteronomy today. Everyone gets to rest. Everyone in the household, even the slaves and the foreigners and the animals, everyone gets to rest. The Sabbath, you see, is God's gracious reminder that God frees us from those things that can so easily enslave us. And it's also God's way of energizing us to work for the life of all. So the Sabbath is not just given to us so that we can have some rest or some time off. It's not just for a job well done or the completion of a week worthy of reward. But rest is needed because it anticipates action for the sake of life once again. Which is why I think in today's gospel, Jesus gets so angry, as Mark says, because here is a chance to give a man life, to release him from the bondage of a shriveled hand. And in the face of this opportunity, the religious leaders are more concerned with following the rules than they are with freeing a man from his ailment. I can almost hear Jesus sneer at them as he says, "Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath or just to do harm? To save a life or just to kill someone?" With all that in mind, I think we have to ask ourselves, not just how we're doing at taking time for worship and rest, but also how we're doing at giving life, not just for ourselves, but also for others. Such a Sabbath perspective recognizes that observing Sabbath is not optional. We keep the Sabbath so that we can look around our community and ask ourselves, who needs rest? So we can ask, who isn't here and why? Who is in need of life when no one else seems to notice? Indeed, we keep the Sabbath because without it, it becomes too easy to give up fighting for those for whom life has been taken away. We keep the Sabbath because it's hard work to be vigilant in helping those whose lives are in need of restoration and healing and wholeness. We keep the Sabbath because it's hard work to persist in acting with love and life when it seems like day after day, fear and hatred and even just the busyness of everyday life threaten to overwhelm us. Indeed, if we are keeping Sabbath, we don't have qualifiers or quantifiers for who deserves abundant life, because Sabbath is not just for our personal well-being, but for others to have abundant life as well. This week, when I saw the footage of Mamadou Gassama, the Malian man who climbed up those 4 balconies to save that child's life in France, I saw it as an act of Sabbath. As Gassama stretched out his hand to that little boy and grabbed him and pulled him to safety, I recalled the words from Deuteronomy. The Lord your God brought you out of the land of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Likewise, in the gospel, Jesus tells the man to stretch out his hand, and as he did, he's healed. The Sabbath is our weekly reminder that God's hands are always reaching out to us, and how, with God's help, we get to reach out and give life to others. So this Sunday afternoon, whether you go home and take a nap, or maybe give thanks for a school year almost completed, or you go out and do some yard work, or call or visit a friend, or maybe even head off on your own vacation, I pray your Sabbath is not only restful, but life-giving. Amen.